Hey, I'm Hollis, and welcome to the Friendly Fangirl podcast, where I nerd out on the films, shows, and video games that I encounter every week. Be sure to follow this podcast, and please follow my Twitter and blog at Hollis Films to follow my journey experiencing the entertainment industry's greatest stories. Beware of spoilers, you have been warned. Game of the week is Link's Awakening, the remake, which is a remake to the original that released on the Game Boy like 30 years ago. I don't think I ever played the original, though I did watch a Let's Play of it, and I fell in love. The concept of the story was just so different from what we see in other Zelda games. Like, we're not even in Hyrule in this one, and that alone is very unique. The soundtrack is also one of my favorites in the series as well. Needless to say, when the remake was announced, I was thrilled. I didn't think the game had a big enough fan base to warrant this remake, not to mention that I instantly became obsessed with the new art style, so I was just extremely hyped at that announcement, and it's no wonder why this was one of the first games I ever played on my Switch. So yeah, the art style, beautiful, a little quirky, really cute, and it's perfect for this game. Being honest, looking back at the first 3 games preceding this one, I'm not sure if this art style would fit as perfectly as it does in Link's Awakening. It's very unique and matches the dreamland vibes of the game. While I enjoy the nostalgic texture of an old-school Game Boy soundtrack, the music is so wonderfully upgraded. Hearing the Ballad of the Windfish in this game brings me peace to my soul. The story does as well, as you journey through a world not Hyrule and wake the Windfish to be released from the dream and get back to real life, which is where all the deep lore is, but I won't get into it. Gameplay is also upgraded in my mind, but that's totally credited to this game being ported to the Switch, which is much more capable than the Game Boy is. We now have the benefit of equipping 2 items along with our sword and shield, rather than having to constantly pick and choose only 2 at a time. Like in the original, you can have your sword and shield, but only in your sword and shield. Like, you couldn't have your sword and shield and something like your bow or your bombs. Like, you had to pick and choose, and that, I don't like that. It helps with the pacing and the flow of the gameplay the way it is in this remake, and we don't have to constantly stop to switch out our inventory. Other than that, nothing much has changed. All the dungeons are the same, with the same puzzles and strats from the original. Bosses are the same, mini games are pretty much the same. All the tools and the puzzles unlocked with them are the same. It's a remake that doesn't ruin the original in any way. It still holds the same vibes and feel as the original does, but also improves on whatever needed to be improved on, and overall, a very enjoyable experience. Either way, I recommend Link's Awakening, whether you play the new shiny version or kick back to the OG nostalgic version. It's a classic Zelda game, and an enchanting tale to be sure. Mr. Robot. This has been on my list for a while now. I loved Rami Malek in Until Dawn, so I already loved him before he gave the Oscar-winning portrayal of Freddie Mercury in 2018. He's why this show is on my radar. Elliot is a genius hacker who shares the same outlook on society as I do, basically. There are too many specifics to state, but every time his inner monologue comes on, I'm always agreeing with what he's saying when he reflects on society as a whole. One major flaw that seems to be the heart of the plot is the concept of economic imprisonment, basically referring to how we're all bound to some financial contract, absolutely swallowed in debt, be that some individual company or the government as a whole, and we'll never be free. We always belong to somebody. Will always be owned in this way. Christian Slater as Mr. Robot takes action, and Elliot is the key to making this vision a new reality. Mr. Robot himself is a fun and eccentric character. He was also really convincing. Like, I would totally support his cause. I think Angela had the potential to be an interesting character. I was frankly bored with her plot and just the whole thing with her boyfriend, but she's definitely the type of character that will throw herself into the thick of some deep plot, and I hope that's what happens in the other seasons, because she has the makings of a really good character and a really good character arc. Darlene is pretty cool, as well as the rest of the F Society squad. Tyrell makes for a very interesting antagonist. He's definitely mental, but I'm wondering what kind of dynamic he'll bring, as it seems to me at the end he teamed up with Elliot in the end. So I'm wondering how that will play out, but he's effectively helped end the world, and that's going to be an interesting thing to explore in season 2. I love the character Elliot. I remember in the first 15 minutes, we witnessed his first therapy session, and the therapist made a comment about his delusions, and then Elliot proceeds to doze off and imagine a conversation that never happened. That was literally in the first 15 minutes, and I really loved that, because it kept me on my toes literally every episode from that moment on. And there were like 10 episodes in season 1. I spent the whole season just like avidly paying attention because of those first 15 minutes. I just had a lot of PTSD from Fight Club, which I won't talk about. But I always wondered if this would ever come into play, and it did. The final 3 episodes revealed that I wasn't just having PTSD, it was actually happening. For the moment, I won't deep dive into spoilers in case you haven't seen Mr. Robot or Fight Club, but if you know, you know. Overall, season 1 was a solid start. The first few episodes were great, the middle a bit forgettable, but the final part of the season really ramps up. I have a feeling that season 1 did what it could to build up to a hyped season 2, and I am very excited moving forward. Alright, movie recommendation of the week. It's been a few podcasts now, and I have yet to recommend a Harry Potter movie. Well, today is that day, and today I am talking about Order of the Phoenix. First of all, let's talk about some of the new cast and crew that were introduced in this installment. My number one girl, Luna Lovegood, played by Ivana Lynch, stole my heart. Like, she's like 35% of the reason why I'm half gay. Like, seriously. I was obsessed with the character and actress in an unhealthy way in middle school. Like, I just know an unnecessary amount of knowledge about Ivana. I don't want to talk about it. Helena Bonham Carter, one of my favorite actresses of all time, is literally the only one that could have played Bellatrix this perfectly. You know, if you don't know, I'm a huge Tim Burton fan, so just seeing her in these Potter films, you know, I hate Bellatrix, but dang, I love Helena. George Harris arrives as Kingsley Shacklebolt. If anyone's got style, it's him. Natalia Tena is introduced as the Hufflepunk role model, Nymphadora Tonks. Yes, sir. Melda Staunton was also perfectly cast as the most hated Potter character of all time. Hate Umbridge, but Staunton is so enjoyable to watch in this movie. You love to hate her. So currently, there are 7 Wizarding World films that David Yates has directed, and Order of the Phoenix was the first one. I like his style and what he brings to these films. Nicholas Hooper jumped in to compose the score for this film as well as Half-Blood Prince, and I absolutely love both of his scores. Tim Burke, Tim Lewis, and Mark Day are some other new names that we will continue to see in the rest of the franchise, as well as the 3 Fantastic Beasts movies that are currently out right now. I really want to gush about Harry's story here, because to me, His year 5 story is the one I relate to the most. His experience with depression is so real. The way he isolated himself in the beginning like that, even though he had people around him ready to help him, is so relatable to me. Even in my own experience with depression, I knew I had good support around me, but that never stopped me from feeling like I was the loneliest person in the world. The DA meetings picked Harry up as he had a new mission to focus on. He made a difference in his classmates' lives, and that's as inspiring as his whole "if they can do it, why not us" speech. Harry's strength and resilience really shines in this film, even after Sirius dies, and this is probably my favorite chapter in Harry's story from his whole entire life so far. Harry didn't exactly play the role of the hero in the climax. He destroyed the Department of Mysteries, shot some spells at some Death Eaters, and watched Dumbledore fight Voldemort. But what made him a hero on this day was his mind battle with Voldemort. He was able to resist because he spent that whole school year persevering over his depression issues, and that made him strong enough to fight back and not be pushed around by Voldemort's petty mind torture. And I admire Harry for this. Speaking of the Department of Mysteries, this part of the story is exciting. In the book, the gang goes into other rooms, and it's the most wackiest experience that no one ever talks about. We only got to see a small portion in the film, like a very minuscule portion in the film. But it's still exciting as we watch a bunch of teenagers stand on their own against a bunch of criminals. That's pretty lit. Also, can someone please explain the veil to me? Because I feel like it's been 20 years and no one actually knows what it is. I loved the whole battle when the Order of the Phoenix showed up. Like, it's just super cool seeing fully trained wizards go at it in battle like this. "Get away from my godson" is such a classic line. And the death here is so utterly heartbreaking, like not just for us and Harry, but for Lupin as well, as he is now truly alone with no friends in the world. And if you listen to the rest of this podcast, you'll get a deep dive in that. Just wait. Battle though. Sheesh. Voldemort versus Dumbledore remains to be the coolest duel we've ever seen, and I'm not just saying that because I'm amused at Voldemort and the weird noises he makes. It was truly well thought out, well designed, and well animated. I loved every second of it. Like, that's Wizarding World at its finest. Sorcerer's Stone, Prisoner of Azkaban, and Order of the Phoenix are not only my top 3 Potter films, but my favorite books in the series as well. The plot and the magic are continued in such an exciting way. There's laughter, tears, and everything in between. The music and the visuals are beautiful. The vibes this film has always stands out to me every marathon I have, and I don't think I'll ever get tired of it. A Harry Potter holiday is in 2 days, so why wouldn't I gush about one of my favorite Potter characters today? The Superstar Award doesn't go to a real person this week, but a fictional character, Remus Lupin. Special thanks to J.K. Rowling for creating the character, and to David Thewlis, who portrayed him in the films perfectly. First of all, Lupin's mother's maiden name was Howell. Howell. And his dad's name was Lyle, which apparently derives from the Norse word for wolf. Wolf. Lyle Lupin was actually, I guess, the closest thing to the Wizarding World's ghost hunter, like Zach Bagans from Ghost Adventures, but wizards? And also, like, boggarts and other weird things. Lupin's parents actually met during a boggart encounter, which is actually not the most ironic thing we've heard today. To add to this, of course it was Fenrir Greyback who bit Lupin as a child, because there are only 2 werewolves that we're allowed to know about, apparently. However, it's a deep lesson to be shared, as Greyback wouldn't have done anything if it weren't for Lyle trash-talking werewolves in the first place. His only child became what he previously described as evil and soulless, and that's pretty dark, man. If only his coworkers believed Lyle when he called Greyback a werewolf. That's what happens when you don't read page 394. The tragedy of Remus Lupin is that he embodies the lone wolf in literally every sense. And it starts all the way back in childhood. His parents were desperate to keep his condition a secret, so he grew up not allowed to play with the other kids and was also very used to moving around from place to place. It wasn't until Dumbledore came and promised that Remus was more than welcome to come to school, as his secret and the safety of the students was secured. Dumbledore became one of the few in Remus's life that understood and accepted him, and gave Remus a chance at a normal life. So it was at Hogwarts where Remus had a home that he didn't have to run away from. A home for 7 years where him and his classmates would be safe. And a home where he made his first friends, his only friends, his best friends, the Marauders. Now, I'm going through Remus Lupin's official Pottermore biography, and it literally describes Remus as the underdog's friend. Like, shut up. Anyways, these were Lupin's golden years. He was seen as the moral compass between the rambunctious James and Sirius, though he always let them get into their shenanigans no matter what, just because he loved them. May they rest in peace. Of course, we all know the Marauder's story by heart, and I'm not going to repeat it here. But for the strange and unusual, nothing means more than a group of friends who accepts you for all of your oddities and whatever makes you different. Even after finding out he was a werewolf, James, Sirius, and Peter stuck by his side until the end. Their tale was one of pure love and friendship. And we know how it ended, but just imagine seeing the Marauder's downfall from Lupin's perspective, giving what he believed to be the truth for 12 whole years. Sirius not only betrayed the entire Order of the Phoenix, but indirectly caused Lily and James's death, and then murdered Peter in broad daylight. 2 best friends dead, and the other in prison for it. Imagine how crushed Remus felt those 12 years, not knowing the truth. Between that and his lone wolf lifestyle, that 12 years, unbearably lonely, topped with depression and grief. Like, I tear up just thinking about it, like, putting myself in his shoes and seeing that in his perspective. Like, it's heartbreaking. Skipping through what we know from Potter's story, we know it must have been a very magical year, not only to teach Harry, but to find out that he was just as accepting and loving as his parents. You know, as Lupin does tell Harry, you're more like them than you know. I think that's what he meant. While his time as a teacher was short-lived, that 1 year must have kept his spirits a bit up until Voldemort's return. Not only did Remus have a solid purpose again, but he was able to start the war with one of his best friends at arm's length once again, after only finding out of Sirius's innocence a year prior. But that was also short-lived too, as Sirius was murdered by Bellatrix. So now Remus is back where he started. 2 BFFs dead, and 1 living as a heartless traitor. That scene in Order of the Phoenix where Sirius dies, you know, seeing Harry scream, that's gut-wrenching, you know, but look who's holding him back. Remus. And that one shot as Harry runs away, you see Remus looking out to him. Just pure devastation on his face. I cry for Lupin in that scene while everyone else is crying for Harry. I'm being very honest here. Ending off his tragic biography, Lupin spent a year purposely actively isolating himself. Lupin was smitten by the lovely Hufflepunk hero Tonks and enjoyed teaming up with her on missions, though he didn't see himself worthy enough for Tonks, who was so young and lively, so he was taken by surprise when she admitted she was smitten for him too, though he thought she deserved better and proceeded to try his best at avoiding her for her own good, which wasn't a good idea, but it was much worse after Sirius died, because his death affected them both very deeply, on top of their, romance issues. Skipping ahead a bit more, they did end up together. They got married and had a son, Teddy, and while these were happy occasions, Remus still feared that his condition would negatively affect this happiness. Which is fair considering how crappy the rest of his life has been. It's not too far-fetched to expect the worst. Ironically, Remus was able to overcome these feelings, for a little bit. He loved Tonks and embraced fatherhood, and then he died. A hero's death, side by side with his wife. And it's bittersweet. He was in a good place in life, but when you read his whole story like this, 90% of his life was lonely and sad. In his 38 years, only a fourth of it was mildly positive for him. And yeah, I feel like there have been times in my life where I felt alone, outcast, and sad, and I relate to him in that way. But I also cling on to Remus's experiences and finding friends who accepted him completely. And also finding a home at Hogwarts. We're both alike in that way, I think. There's nothing better in life, to me at least, than a close group of friends that love and support you. And there's no home like Hogwarts. I don't know what else I can say about that. Hogwarts is Hogwarts, man. Yeah. Remus died at Hogwarts. Is it too bizarre to wish the same for myself? That's a thought. That's it for this week. Again, follow me on Twitter or leave a comment, and let me know what you've been fangirling over this week. Thank you for joining me, and I'll talk to you again next week.